Ladies and gentlemen, this trial actually started last Monday when we began the selection process to select you as the jury who would hear this case. As the judge described for you, the part of this trial now, this process, what's going on right now is called opening statement. The judge described to you what that is. And oftentimes, when lawyers do opening statements, they're taught to come up with like a theme to grab the jury's attention. They're taught that in law school, actually. But ladies and gentlemen, in this case, with these facts, with this proof, there are no words for this. And a theme or an attempt at a theme would do nothing but diminish what happened at 722 Leicester Street in the early morning hours of March 2nd, 2008. Now, 9 victims. There's no need to attempt to grab your attention with an opening statement. Ladies and gentlemen, the state submits to you that the proof in this case, the facts that will be presented to you in this case, will grab you and they will not let you go. In order for us to get there, though, with the 9 victims, 6 dead, 2 of the dead, a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. Of the 3 victims who are still alive, who were critically injured inside that home, one was a 2-month-old. You will hear testimony from Dr. Malbauer, who treated these children at LeBonheur Hospital here in Memphis. Hospital is just essentially right down the street from this courthouse. How when she arrived, she had been beaten and stabbed. How her brain was exposed. She's alive. A 5-year-old arriving at LeBonheur Hospital, beaten, eyes swollen shut, stabbed as well, but alive. And finally, a 9-year-old. There is no way to describe to you the condition of this 9-year-old, because he came to LeBonheur with a knife sticking out of his head with the handle broken off, embedded in his skull. And he's alive. The proof will show, though, that Jesse Dotson left that house on March 2nd, 2008 on the 9-year-old's bike and left all that behind in that house. But in order to get you there, unfortunately, the state of Tennessee can't leave you at that doorstep. You have to go inside. We have to take you inside. And the proof will show you that inside that house, and there is no other word than grisly scene, bodies everywhere, blood all over the walls, blood all over the bathroom, blood on the ceiling. There'll be proof that that came from repeated blows to the child with a 2x4 on the ceiling. On On March 3rd, 2008, at approximately 6 p.m., this is essentially how this story began, how this case started that brings us here today. You will hear testimony from Officer Randy Davis. He was one of the first on-scene officers. There were many. They received a 911 call. One of the mothers of Cecil Dodson II, the 2-year-old, had left the baby with her father, and she was supposed to pick him up, and no one would answer the door. She went by on Saturday, pulled into the driveway, laid on the horn. This happened before. She wasn't concerned at that time. She knew he was with her father, his father. But she goes back because she can't get Cecil Sr. at work. She can't seem to get in touch with anybody. She goes to the door. You will hear from her. She will tell you how she just felt like something wasn't right, so she called the police. Officer Davis, along with other police officers, entered into that home. And in the living room, a very tiny sized living room with couches in an L shape. As he approached, he saw beyond this very big television. It was like a big screen TV, only it was in the middle of the room. It was almost blocking the door. He could only see to the right of it initially. He will tell you that. But around the side of that television, he could see a dead male slumped over on the couch. He could see a dead adult female slumped over on the couch. He could see another dead female slumped over in her lap. Officer Davis knew he had 3 dead on his hands. At that point, the other officers are entering the house, and as they get around the TV, Hollis Seals is laying in the living room, dead. Now they've got 4 dead. There's 4 dead. They're communicating. They're dispatching over the radio. They begin to search the house, to clear the house. They go into the bathroom, and in the tub, covered with blood all over the walls, they find a 9-year-old in the tub. At first, they thought he was dead. They go to the next bedroom. There's a 5-year-old laying right there, bleeding, stabbed. Officer Davis will tell you he thought he was dead as well. And then over into the corner of that bedroom, on a pillow, was a 2-year-old, dead. So now he's communicating. He's communicating not 4 victims, 5 victims, not 5 victims, 6 victims, not 6, but 7. We have 8 victims. We have 8 victims. And then he goes to the final bedroom. And in that bedroom is another dead child, 4 years of age. Who could do such a thing? So what happens at that point, ladies and gentlemen? You've got ambulance arriving, you've got fire trucks arriving, you've got police officers arriving. You will hear testimony that the most experienced homicide investigators didn't know how to start this thing. So the investigation began. You will hear testimony from more than one homicide investigator on how they started this investigation. Certainly you start with the crime scene. You identify the victims. You interview family and friends, and then you follow every lead. You will hear testimony from Sergeant Mullins. Lieutenant Armstrong was head of the homicide team on duty that night. He got everybody in a carport and started to assign duties. The first thing was to secure this house. Sergeant Mullins will tell you that when they first arrived, they didn't know what they had on their hands. Is this a murder, suicide? They didn't know if the perpetrator was in the house and wanted the dead. So they stopped. He was put in charge of this crime scene as a supervisor of this crime scene. You will hear his testimony as the decisions he made and the decisions Memphis Police Department made to preserve this scene, collect evidence, collect exhibits, and start to try to sort through all this. The crime scene. The proof will show, after the bodies were removed, in that small living room, male victim was laying right here. Female victim here. Another female victim here. And then over down here is the other male victim. In the bedroom, blood all over the walls, on the blinds, on the bed, and the pillow right here. The proof will show is where Cecil Dotson II was laid to rest. His brother, Cedric, still alive, was around right here. In the final bedroom, looks like a child's room, of course, Samario. The proof will show that's where his head was laying. In the bathroom, with blood all over it, the proof will show that's where CJ was found, in that tub with that knife in his head. And then they start to look around. Sergeant Mullins will tell you that as they started to move stuff around, they started to find shell casings under stuff. When they moved a jacket, they found those shell casings were all picked up and put in a Ziploc bag. Sergeant Mullins will tell you that they didn't see it because it was under a jacket, and the person or persons responsible for this at that point must have left those behind. They begin to find knife blades all over the house with no handles on them. Two of the knife blades were in the tub under CJ. There was a knife blade in the corner of the bedroom where Cecil Dotson II was. And there was also a bent knife blade in a pillow on the bed in the room where Cecil Dotson II was found. And in the kitchen, an overturned silverware tray. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, the proof will show that there were 4 blades found at this point and only 1 knife handle. The proof will show they tore that house apart and couldn't find the other handles. And then the 5th blade, ladies and gentlemen, the proof will show was in CJ's head. You will hear testimony from Dr. Malbauer, who removed that blade from CJ's head. Miraculous story. CJ's alive. He's doing well. And he's back in school. One of the only weapons they found. They began to find boards inside this house with blood on them. A board propped up against the wall, another one shoved under here, all had blood on them. 2 boards in the bedroom where 4-year-old Samario lay by those bunk beds. And then a long 2x4 with blood all over it in the same room where little Cecil Dotson II was laying on that pillow and his 5-year-old brother clinging to life. board pieces in the toilet, as well as propped up in the bathroom. Forensic evidence. With a scene like this, everything started to get collected. The proof will show they were swabbing everything, dusting everything, taking samples out of the carpet, cutting the wall out, everything that they could do to try and find some evidence of who did this. The proof will show that every bit of blood in that house you could tie to a victim. No one else's blood. Fingerprints we found. We found Jesse Dotson's fingerprints on a beer can in the house, but he had been in there earlier. The proof will show. Fingerprints of Marissa on cans, and these were people who had been in the home. Then they began to collect fibers and things. The problem was, ladies and gentlemen, the proof will show that Cecil Dotson Sr. had just started renting this house 5 months before this incident. The proof will also show, and you can see, and you will see on the pictures, this house was dirty. There was trash all over the place. The carpet was dirty. The couch was dirty. They found 2 hairs under Cindry Roberson's body. The proof will show, ladies and gentlemen, that her pants and her underwear were pulled down to her ankles after she was shot. Sergeant Mullins will testify based on the crime scene evidence, and you can see for yourself, that where she was seated in that love seat. The proof will show a puddle of dried blood where she would have been sitting. She was drugged down to the floor on a dirty couch onto a dirty carpet. The 2 hairs that were found under her leg, we couldn't time them, we couldn't date them, and they're unknown. Nothing forensically assisted the police in solving this case. And ladies and gentlemen, you will see this is actually a spec of the model that the FBI built for the purposes of assisting Sergeant Mullins' testimony in this case to explain to you where all those things, the boards and the knives and the shell casings, were found. This is the living room, right here. The front door is right here. This is the television. Hollis Seals was right here. Marissa Williams here. Cindry Roberson. Cecil here. You go through the house, and the first bathroom to your right is where CJ was. The proof will show that inside this door is where Cedric Dotson was. Samario Dotson was in here. Going back out into this bedroom, here are the bunk beds. Samario was here. The proof will further show that back here was pristine, clean, with no activity. So they identified the victims. They processed the scene, they collected the evidence, so they start to identify the victims. Marissa Williams, 27 years old. The mother of Samario, and Cedric, and CJ. She was dating Cecil Dotson, the senior, and they had just moved into Leicester Street about 5 months before this horrific crime. Hollis Seals, 33 years old, was a friend of Cecil Dotson's. His girlfriend, 22-year-old Sindri Roberson. Cecil Dotson II, 2 years old, found dead in that first bedroom. Samario, 4 years old, found dead in the other bedroom by the bunk beds. Cedric Dotson, 5 years old, suffered that attack and he's alive. Sanaya Dotson, 2 months old, stabbed, beaten. And Cecil Dotson Jr., CJ, 9-year-old, and their father, 30-year-old Cecil Dotson, Jesse Dotson's brother. The next step, ladies and gentlemen, the proof will show, is they began to interview family and friends. They had to figure out who could do something like this and who was the last person to see them. So they start to put it together. The last people to see the victims alive. The proof will show that on March 1st, 2008, at approximately 3 p.m., there was a family gathering at 722 Leicester Street. They were going to watch the basketball game. The proof will show that Jesse Dotson's father, Jesse Sr., was there. His brother, William Waddell, Jesse was there. Cecil was there. And at some point throughout the day, the kids all ended up there. Jesse Sr. will tell you how they were riding their bikes. Everybody was drinking, hanging out. He will tell you that he left 722 Leicester Street at approximately 6:30 p.m. on March 1st, 2008. At approximately 9:30 p.m. that night, William Waddell, Jesse and Cecil's brother, he leaves that address and he will tell you that he saw Cecil, Jesse, and Hollis pulling off together. They had been drinking. Approximately 10:30 p.m., Kiera will tell you that she saw Cecil and Jesse at her mother's house, 1403 Silver. Her mother, Sheila Jones, was Jesse's girlfriend. She will tell you how Jesse and Cecil came by in Cecil's Lincoln, that they would have been drinking, and that Jesse came by to find Sheila. But Sheila was out partying with the girls that night. The proof will show that Cecil and Jesse left there between 10:30 and 11 p.m. Willie Hill. He will testify that he saw Cecil, Jesse, and Hollis at the Barclay Apartments at approximately 11:30 p.m. The proof will show that Hollis Seals had just gotten out of jail and that Willie Hill was holding his P262 Sig Sauer handgun. Willie Hill will testify that he loaded that gun with .380s and that Hollis came and got that gun. And then Hollis Seals, along with that gun, Cecil and Jesse left between 11:30 and 12. Getting into the early morning hours of March 2nd, 2008, the proof will show that at approximately 1:10 a.m. at 2918 Brewer here in Memphis, Tennessee, that Stacy Young sees Cecil, Jesse, and Hollis at her place. She lives in a house. She could tell they were drinking. She says they left there sometime between 1 and 1:30. Approximately 1:30 a.m., Erica Smith, ladies and gentlemen, the proof will show, was the female who actually went to the Leicester Street house to look for her son. That's Cecil Dotson II's mother. She saw Cecil, Jesse, and Sindri, and believes Hollis was in the car. At 1:30 a.m., Jesse Dotson finishes the timeline for the police. He tells the police that Cecil, Sindri, and Hollis dropped him off at 1403 Silver, and that's the last time he saw his brother alive. At this point in the investigation, the proof will show what are the police confronted with. You will hear testimony by the officers who were involved in this investigation. They had numerous victims, dead women, dead children. 2 different caliber shell casings were recovered from that crime scene, 380 and 9mm. Injuries. The proof will show, and you will hear testimony from the medical examiners who performed the autopsies on the victims. All the adults were shot. All the adults were shot. The proof will show that the children were not shot. They were all beaten and stabbed. At this point, the police realize they've got these type of weapons involved. Handguns, of course, boards, which they have, and they realize, ladies and gentlemen, and the proof will show, that as they started to collect these blades, some of them got farberware on them. And then they saw that silverware tray that was overturned. They knew they had kitchen knives that came from inside the house. Altered crime scene. They started to realize some things, ladies and gentlemen. The shell casings were all in a Ziploc bag and left under her jacket. They saw that Sindri Roberson had been moved, that her pants had been pulled down. Cecil Dotson Sr., the proof will show his pants were pulled down. Hollis Seal's pants were pulled down as well. Proof will also show that when they turned that house upside down to find the other knife handles, they could only find one that was actually under the bed that they couldn't see until they got on their knees and looked for it. And then they learned that Cecil Dotson had some gang ties. Him and his buddies, his friends from the neighborhood where he grew up, called themselves gangster disciples. So now, at this point, the police at least have some lead that Cecil Dotson, the senior, was running around with gang members. So they start to investigate this. The proof will show that the officers kept hitting walls in trying to determine what gang would kill women and children. So where are they at? Police learn that Cedric and Cecil Dotson, the senior, are going to make it. They didn't know that right away with those kind of injuries. They're alive. The proof will further show that because the police did not know what they were dealing with, they did not let any family members, including Jesse Dotson, know which kids were alive. The police needed one of these 2 children to wake up and to talk to them, because maybe they could tell them something about what happened. March 6, 2008. The family becomes scared. Think about it. The proof will show that Nicole Dotson, Jesse's sister, Jesse's mother, Priscilla Shaw, they were terrified because some of their family had been killed in this manner. The proof will show that Nicole calls the Memphis Police Department and says, I think someone's inside my house. I just got this phone call. We're scared. The proof will show that the police department, in cooperation with the district attorney's office, decides to put the family, including Jesse Dotson, into protective custody. On March 6, 2008, in order to accomplish this, the proof will show that before the police department could put together their operation plan to put the family in protective custody, they had to protect them as to where they were. His whole entire family were grouped together at this Gail address in Memphis. It's a cousin or somebody who's very close to you. You'll hear from her, Sharonda Lane. So what they did is they told a Memphis police car to go sit in front of the house. The proof will show that that police car pulled in front of the Gail address but never went inside to tell the family why they were there. You will hear testimony from Jesse Dotson's family members that when he looked out and saw that police car sitting out front, watching the news about what's unfolding, he grabs his brother William's gun, puts it to his head in front of his family, and says, they are going to pin this on me. I'm not going back to jail. You will hear testimony that Officer Stepney got out of the squad car because family members were running up to this address and they looked frantic. He stopped them. And the proof will show that he asked one of them what's going on. And they're like, my brother or my cousin's got a gun to his head. He's like, well, I'm going to have to go in there. He's like, no, he's going to kill himself. Officer Stepney will tell you that he got on the phone with Jesse Dotson and talked to him on that telephone and talked him down. Told him, look, we're here to protect you. We're here to put your family in protective custody. You need to calm down. And he calmed them down. And they got the gun, and Jesse and his family were put in protective custody. March 7, 2008. The proof will show that from the second the police knew that CJ was still alive, they had to see if they could talk to him, because a 9-year-old might remember something. So they sent Pat Lewis, who works for the Child Advocacy Center. She's a forensic child interviewer. She begins trying to talk to him. He's in and out of it. The proof will show his eyes are still shut. He's screaming things out. He mentions Roger. Then he mentions an uncle, and they find out, well, that's an uncle that died. So that uncle's not alive. Then he starts cussing like a criminal would, and they're wondering if he's reliving the incident. He's talking, but then his chest starts to expand. You will hear testimony from the people who witnessed this, and then he can't talk. At that point, they cease the interview. They can't get anything concrete out of him at this point. It's all too sporadic. But on March 7, 2008, Sergeant Caroline Mason talked to him. She asked CJ, what happened to you? And he told her, I was stabbed in the chest. Who did this to you? Junior. Uncle Junior. The proof in this case, ladies and gentlemen, will be that the only individual in their entire family called Junior is Jesse Dotson. And how are you going to know that? Because Jesse Dotson told the police that, among all his other family members. There is no other Junior. Now, the whole entire investigation now stops. He's in protective custody. It still doesn't mean he's done anything. This is a lead. Now they have to talk to Jesse Dotson. They immediately put him under arrest because the victims identified him. They bring him downtown to this building. The proof will show that they began to talk to him again. And he just told them the same thing. I don't know what you're talking about. I told you where I was. I told you everybody I saw. And the last time I saw my brother was when he dropped me off at Sheila's. Lieutenant Armstrong, he's now deputy director, but then a lieutenant, he decided to take over the interview. Sergeant Mason and Sergeant Starr were talking to Jesse Dotson. He said some interesting things that Carolyn Mason noted. His demeanor. The proof will show that obviously Cecil was already dead, and he's bringing up stuff that happened between them. Lieutenant Armstrong makes the decision in the case. You'll hear testimony from him. Of course, Jesse Dotson was being interrogated. He made the decision to let him know that CJ was alive. And that CJ had identified him as the attacker. And that moment is when he confessed to the police. Not before, the proof will show. He kept his story straight, ladies and gentlemen. He begins to tell Lieutenant Armstrong, and you will hear this proof from Lieutenant Armstrong, that him and his brother were drinking all day. They got into an argument over at Willie Hill's house when they went to get Hollis's gun, .380. The argument carried back into the house. He told Lieutenant Armstrong that his brother wouldn't let it go, and he told him that his brother went for a gun, a shotgun. The proof will show, ladies and gentlemen, that inside this house, there's a shotgun in the corner. And when he put the gun down, Jesse shot him. And he shot him in front of Marissa and Sindri and Hollis. And then he just began to shoot. And he killed him in that small living room. He also told the police, what kind of gun did your brother have? A 9mm that Marissa had purchased. .380, 9mm. What did you do to the women? He told Armstrong, I shot them. What about the kids? The proof will show they saw me. But what'd you do to them? I stabbed them. Where did you get the knife from? Where did you get your knives from? In the house. No, where? He says, kitchen. And ladies and gentlemen, after he confesses to one of the worst mass killings in Memphis history, you know what he does? He asks to see his mother. Remember, she's in protective custody. She has no idea why her son's been taken out. So the police get her, and they bring her so they can see him. He has to be alone with her. You will hear from his mother. She will tell you that her son brought her in, sat her down, and said, Mama, I did it. You did what? She didn't believe he did this. She'll tell you that. She didn't believe it. She said, Mama, I did it. What'd you do? And she will tell you how he told her the same story that he told Lieutenant Armstrong about him and Cecil getting into that argument. And she said to him, "What about those babies?" They saw it, Mama. They saw it. The proof will be that after he confessed to this crime twice, he hugged his mother goodbye. He told his mother and Lieutenant Armstrong that he left on CJ's bike. That's how he got away. I stabbed him. And ladies and gentlemen, this is 1403 Silver. This is Sheila's house, his girlfriend's home, where he told the police that he rode the bike there. And guess what they find at Sheila's house? In her shed on March 9th, 2008. And the only way they knew it was there is because he told them. After he confessed to this crime, the police began to corroborate his confession. So they went to that address, and Sheila's like, "I don't use that shed, I'll open it up for you." She's like, "I've never seen that bike before." The proof is that's CJ's bike. Then, she also points out to the police that when Jesse came in to her house at 5 o'clock in the morning on March 2nd, 2008, she was not home. Her daughter was. Kiara Jones will tell you that after he came in, she heard the water turn on. And then Sheila noticed that she had bleach stains on her rug, and she says that she did not spill any bleach, and her daughter did not spill any bleach, and that the bleach had been moved. She will tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that she came home at 5 something in the morning, and he was in bed, in her bed, and that was unusual. The proof will show you, ladies and gentlemen, when you look at the evidence presented this week of his behavior prior to his arrest and confession. He's with Cecil until 2 a.m. He doesn't show up for work the next day. You'll hear that testimony from his father. He was working with his dad. The bodies are found on March 3rd, 2008. He tells his family that Cecil, Hollis, and Sindri dropped them off at 1403 Silver. He tells them that repeatedly because they're wanting to know, "Hey, when's the last time you saw Cecil?" The proof will show you. He said, he didn't say he drove CJ's bike away from the crime scene during the murders, that he was already home. And then he immediately, and this is important, ladies and gentlemen, the proof will show, you will hear testimony from his family members who are all out at the crime scene. And they're trying to figure out who could do this. He brings up the GDs. He says the gangster disciples, Cecil's folks. Proof will be from testimony that folks means gangster disciple. He brings the GDs into this immediately. March 5th, 2008. He tells police the same story he's telling his family. "I don't know, Cecil dropped me off." But ladies and gentlemen, very important, you will hear testimony from the officers who talked to Jesse Dotson and asked them, "Who could do this to your brother?" He brings in the gangster disciples and says Doc Holliday, who was a friend of Cecil's. They had a falling out several weeks before. He actually, the proof will show, there was a violation, a gang violation, because Doc and Cecil had gotten into an argument. Jesse tells them, "Well, Ordinarily, when that happens, there's a trial, a gangster disciple trial, and punishment. Well, what would the punishment be? Death. He tells the police that. Then he sees the police car outside of Gale and puts a gun to his own head, saying, they're going to pin this on me and I'm not going back to jail. Then he goes into protective custody. All that happened prior to his arrest and confession. Proof of Jesse Dotson's behavior after the confession. Now go back and look at his behavior now that he's confessed to the crime. He admits to leaving 722 Leicester Street on a child's bike. Doesn't call police or family. Ladies and gentlemen, the proof will be when he tells the police that he left that house on a bike before he confessed to killing everybody. It was between 2 and 4 a.m. The bodies weren't discovered till March 3rd, 2008 at 6 p.m. The proof will show they sat in that house, a house he left, on the child's bike for almost 40 hours. That's 2,400 minutes and 144,000 seconds that CJ left, laid in that tub with that knife in his head. He goes to his girlfriend's and hides the bike. Doesn't go to work. Still doesn't say a word to anyone that he was ever there. Remember, Cecil, Hollis, and Sindri dropped him off at 2 a.m. He goes to work. The proof will show Jesse Dotson Sr. will take this witness stand and will testify and tell you he went to work on March 3rd, 2008, while all those victims were sitting in that house and that baby's laying around her dead mother and there's blood all over the walls. Doesn't say a word to his family. They're wanting to know where everybody is and what's happening. 6 p.m. they're found. He says nothing. Tells his lie again about the last time he saw them. Now remember, they're found. You got 3 alive at LeBonner. You got 6 dead in the house. Remember, he was there on a bike. Says nothing. Brings the GDs into the picture quickly. Never says a word to anyone on March 4th. Brings the GDs into it again on March 5th. Sees the police car on March 6th. Look at the corroboration, ladies and gentlemen. The proof will be there for you. You will hear this proof. Explains the use of the 2 guns, Marissa's and Hollis's, 9 and 380. Evidence shows 2 guns were used in the caliber. Tells police he stabbed the children. Ladies and gentlemen, the proof will be that the police never released to the public the injuries of the victims. The only way he knew or could have known that CJ was stabbed was because they played the tape for him of him saying it. They never told him anything about the condition of the other children. He says he stabbed them all. How did he know that? He tells the police he used knives from the kitchen. That wasn't released to anybody. Children could be stabbed in many different ways. Could be with hunting knives. Who knows? He did. Silverware tray overturned in the kitchen floor. He even talks about the shotgun. We got pictures of a shotgun behind his brother. Ladies and gentlemen, the proof in this case, in the worst mass murder in Memphis history, it's a domestic violence case. A brother killed a brother after an argument. And this would be a very different type of case if he would have stopped there. But he didn't. He wasn't going to go back to jail, ladies and gentlemen. And he did whatever he had to do to get out of that house. with no witnesses. So what are the charges? You've heard them read in the indictment. After all the proof is in, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard from all the witnesses and looked at all the exhibits, and we have to take you through the crime scene. It's going to be very lengthy. We ask you to be patient. There's a lot to go through. But after we do all that, we're going to stand back up here, and we're going to ask you to find Jesse Dotson guilty of the premeditated murder of his brother, Cecil. We're going to ask you to find Jesse Dotson guilty of Cecil's girlfriend, Marissa Williams. We're going to ask you to find him guilty of the premeditated murder of Hollis Seals, who just happened to be there. Guilty of the first-degree murder of his girlfriend, Cindri Roberson, who just happened to be there. Guilty of that baby, Cecil Dotson II, who was beaten and stabbed. Guilty of 4-year-old Samario Dotson, beaten and stabbed. Guilty of the attempt to murder, to leave no witnesses to this crime. Of Cedric, of 2-month-old Sanaya, and of CJ. And ladies and gentlemen, you will hear from CJ. He's scared, but he will do the best he can to tell you who did this to him. Thank you for your time and attention.